Hi, everyone. My name is Annie Rogers, and on behalf of the ADDitude team, I'm so pleased to welcome you to today's ADHD Experts presentation titled Parenting Styles That Work for Neurodivergent Children. Leading today's presentation is Dr. Caroline Mendel. Dr. Mendel is the Senior Director of Clinical Services for School and Community Programs and a psychologist in the ADHD and Behavior Disorders Center at the Child Mind Institute, a nonprofit dedicated to helping children and families struggling with mental health and learning disorders. She specializes in the assessment and treatment of youth with ADHD, disruptive behavior, and other co-occurring conditions. In today's webinar, we will discuss the shift from an authoritarian style of parenting used just a generation ago to the approaches used today that really elevate resilience and social emotional awareness. According to research, balancing warmth with limit setting is important to raising well-adjusted children, especially when those children are neurodivergent. So today, our expert will highlight evidence-based parenting strategies that address emotions and challenging behaviors and help build a positive relationship with your child. We would like to begin today's webinar by asking two poll questions to our live audience. The first is, do you strive to use a parenting style that is similar to or different from the one that your parents or caregivers used with you? And piggybacking on that, how well do you feel that your family members support your efforts to develop and use positive parenting techniques right now? Please tell us your answers, and of course you can comment at any time in the text box under the video player. For answers to common webinar questions about slides and transcripts, certificates of attendance, click on the FAQ tab of your webinar screen. If you are listening in replay or podcast mode, visit ADDitudemag.com, search for podcast number 481, and you can access the webinar resources that way, or just by clicking on the episode description wherever you stream your podcasts. If you support the work we're doing here at ADDitude to strengthen the ADHD community, we encourage you to visit ADDitudemag.com/subscribe and sign up for ADDitude Magazine. If you do it now, we are running a special 2-for-1 offer for the holiday season, so you can get a subscription for yourself and for someone else who could benefit from greater ADHD understanding. And last, the sponsor of this webinar today is Play Attention. Research conducted at Tufts University School of Medicine demonstrates that play attention improves attention, behavior, executive function, and overall performance. Harnessing cutting-edge NASA-inspired technology, Play Attention offers a customized program for improving executive function and self-regulation. Through our digital trainer, you can control personalized cognitive exercises using just your mind. Additionally, your program comes complete with a dedicated personal executive function coach who will tailor your plan as you progress. Both home and professional programs are available. Contact Play Attention at 828-676-2240 or click the link on your screen to schedule a free one-on-one consultation. You can also visit www.playattention.com to learn more. ADDitude thanks our sponsors for supporting our webinars. Sponsorship has no influence on speaker selection or webinar content. Okay, without any further ado, thank you so much, Dr. Caroline Mendel, for joining us and for leading this really critical discussion about positive parenting.
Thank you so much for having me and for that introduction. As was mentioned, I work with the Child Mind Institute. We are a nonprofit dedicated to transforming the lives of children and families struggling with mental health and learning disorders. And we do that in 3 ways: through research, clinical care in the New York office where I am and in San Mateo, California, as well as through public education through talks like these and our website, childmind.org, as well as many other resources that we make freely available. In terms of today's talk, I'm going to talk briefly about the evolution of parenting practices. Thank you to those filling out the survey. I can see that there is certainly more difference than similarity in how you're parenting than how you were parented. So we'll talk about where some of those changes have occurred. And I'll touch a bit on considering strengths when understanding neurodivergence and how neurodivergence fits into the evolution of parenting practices. And then the majority of our time will be focused on strategies for parenting neurodivergent youth, because I know that that's really what you came here to hear about today. So in terms of the arc of parenting over time, the focus was historically on raising obedient and productive members of society, to a shift on focusing on raising happy, well-adjusted, resilient kids. And you can see here that this change really occurred only over the course of a century. And I think that this is part of why there can be some strain or points of difference in how parenting has shifted, even from one generation to the next. So in the early 1900s, practices were more about strict scheduling, using harsh techniques. Very often any misbehavior was considered the failure of the mother. So there were these harsh techniques to ensure obedience and to make sure that kids were behaving in the way that they wanted to. There were more concerns about health and mortality. They wanted to get children into the workforce. There was little attention paid to the differences developmentally between kids and adults. And so that's why we see some of these more authoritarian practices earlier in the 1900s. In the 1950s is when the term parenting began to be used widely by psychologists and other professionals. It was not a concept that was studied or considered until around then. And in the late 1900s is when we started to see more of the awareness of the importance of a child's emotional and cognitive development, of their needs being different than those of adults, of wanting to pay more attention to building resilience, focusing on empathy, having them understand their emotional experience and the emotional experience of others, and seeing the importance of things like play, understanding that some of those harsh techniques were actually causing distress and should, maybe be shifted a bit. And that's where we kind of arrive at some of the skills that it sounds like many of you are utilizing today, and many of the ones that I'll be discussing in today's talk. When we think about parenting styles, these were one of the main researchers that first looked into this was Diana Baumrind in 1966. And there was a spectrum of styles. There were permissive parents who let their kids do what they want. There were more authoritarian parents who focused on compliance and obedience and more harsh discipline. And then in the middle was authoritative parents that combined that warmth and limit setting. So seeing a place for both developing that relationship and attending to the child's emotional needs while also setting limits and not kind of having this lack of control that might lead to other maladaptive behaviors. And research shows that this authoritative parenting or this mix of that parental warmth and a bit of the control is something that is positive for a child's overall emotional development. When parents are either too permissive, or when they're psychologically controlling or focusing too much on behavioral control, when they swing too much in that other direction, that's when we see impact on things like symptoms of anxiety, depression, and other maladaptive behavior. So we want to see this combination of warmth and limit setting. And I'll be going into this more specifically when I talk about the different strategies. But for warmth, we want parents to have open communication and involvement in their child's life. Having that warm relationship where kids feel that they can come to their parents and talk about things, involvement in how they're doing in school, who their friends are, kind of having that understanding of what your child is doing and where they're going is a very positive thing. Being able to focus on empathy, understanding their emotional experience, validating their emotional experience, and accepting them for who they are and what they're interested in. These are really positive and protective factors for their mental health. Other strategies that I'll go into are things like one-on-one child-led time, being able to have that time with your child to form that relationship, and then providing frequent praise for the positive behaviors that we want to see. This is combined with limit setting, where we provide consistent routines for our children, we set clear rules and expectations, we monitor their whereabouts, whether it's in the digital world or the real world, and we provide consistent consequences. So again, this balance of warmth and limit setting, this authoritative style has generally found to be the right mix of different strategies to use with your child. Layered into this, I want to think also about some of the changes in how we think about neurodivergence. So neurodivergence has historically been seen as a person not fitting in with society with a pure focus on remediating deficits. And now neurodivergence is seen as an opportunity to embrace diversity, to see that the community or the family that you're a part of is richer because people can bring different skills and abilities to the table. And there's been greater focus on individual differences and leveraging strengths that a child may have. And then I do want to put the caveat here, while still building skills and providing appropriate supports, because of course our children do need to thrive in certain settings that expect particular behaviors or require certain things of them. And so having that those supports and skill building in place is needed, but it's now balanced with understanding that each person is an individual. We'll individualize the treatment plan and try to leverage some of those strengths that they have and help them understand how their brain works and what it means to be neurodivergent for them. Some societal shifts that have promoted those changes in terms of how we see neurodivergence. The first is science. It has helped us, it has enhanced our understanding of these as brain-based conditions, not as characterological or as the fault of parenting. And we also see that there are individual differences both within a person. So someone can be incredibly bright while also having difficulties with, let's say, a language-based learning disorder, for example. And there's also differences even within a particular category of people. Each child with ADHD is different. Each child with autism is different. And so we know that we want to be thinking about some of those individual differences when we are employing our parenting strategies or putting together our treatment plan. There's been greater advocacy from organizations and public figures that has helped to reduce stigma. People are much more willing to talk about the fact that they are neurodivergent and that they can seek help for that. And we also see some of the ways in which some of these characteristics have been a great strength. So we see, for example, entrepreneurs with ADHD in the media who have been able to utilize some of their traits like risk-taking and problem-solving and having high energy to help them be successful. We have technological advances that have minimized the impact of these on day-to-day functioning. So, for example, things like text-to-speech software or autocorrect and other things like that have helped with some of these day-to-day tasks. And kids are more connected via the internet and social media, so neurodivergent individuals have been able to find community. And then finally, there's been a greater focus on promoting diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging within communities. And this has, been discussed about various aspects of identity, including neurodivergence. So again, I just want this to sort of set the stage for how we think about some of these specific strategies and the ways in which you can help your neurodivergent child at home and in the world. So I'll dive right into the strategies for parenting neurodivergent youth. And this is a hierarchy of behavioral techniques that I use in treatment with my patients and for many, many talks. And this is a great set of skills and a framework when thinking about parenting. The important thing is that you want to start with the more proactive and then work your way up to the more reactive. So you can catch a whole lot more flies with honey than vinegar. And so being able to start from a more preventative place as opposed to a more reactive place is really how you can see the behavior change. And I just want to also say that many of these strategies are helpful for both neurotypical and neurodivergent youth. It's just that with neurodivergent youth, you may need to use more of these strategies, use them more intensely, use them over a longer duration, or use them with the help of a mental health professional to help you individualize some of them to your needs. So it is, if you have other neurotypical siblings that you're also thinking about, these strategies can apply to any child. But again, it's the tailoring and the intensity of the strategy that may be different for some neurodivergent youth. So setting the stage for success. These are strategies that you can put into place to prevent the escalation of behavior, prevent the likelihood that certain behaviors will come up in the first place. And this is to create and establish specific routines. We talked about this with the limit setting aspect. Having structure is really helpful. And especially for neurodivergent youth, using checklists or visual reminders can be very helpful. So being able to help your child with ADHD stay organized and have that visual can really help ground them and understand what's coming next in the day. You also want to break bigger tasks or long-term projects down into small steps. Sometimes the longer projects can feel like Mount Everest. They feel like it's too big of a mountain to climb. If you say, go clean your room, that's a very, very big task to do, but breaking it down into smaller pieces will make it more likely that they will be able to complete that task. Also, along the lines of some executive functioning difficulties that you can proactively address, establishing a dedicated workspace and other organizational systems to help reduce distractions and keep those materials organized. Using visual timers can help with transitions from one activity to the next and help understand the concept of time, which can be challenging for kids with ADHD. And using clear and consistent expectations and consequences. So all kids benefit from knowing what it is that's expected of them, and especially for neurodivergent children, being able to repeat those expectations right before you want the behavior to happen. It will keep it top of mind and make it much more likely that they will engage in those behaviors when they happen. I think it's easy for parents to think, oh, we do the morning routine every time, or we always go to the playground. So of course he knows what he's supposed to do when we get there. But it is very helpful to repeat, the things that you want them to do. When we get to the playground, it's important to use your walking feet, wait your turn to play on the equipment, use the equipment safely, ask somebody first before playing, right? Whatever the things are that they may have difficulty with, you want to kind of remind them of the behaviors that you're hoping to see. When your child is transitioning from tasks, you can provide transition warnings. So especially, they're ending screen time, they're going from a preferred activity to a less preferred activity, letting them know that they have 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 1 minute to kind of ease that transition. It is not going to work all the time, but it will hopefully take the temperature down and make it more likely that they'll be able to make that transition. Next, we have using when-then statements. So this is another way to motivate the behaviors that you want to see, and letting them know that when they finish something less preferred, they will get something preferred. When you finish your homework, then you will get to play video games. When you finish your dinner, then you will get dessert. So it is a nice way to kind of dangle that carrot and let them know the thing that they can get for engaging in the behavior that you're looking to see. And then finally, giving choice when possible. All kids really love to be in control and be in charge. So giving them that choice when it's okay with you. For example, you're doing homework and it's time to start homework. Do you want to start with math or with writing? it is much more likely that they'll be able to accomplish those tasks if they're given that choice and that sense of autonomy. If you have an older child and you say, all right, when you're out with your friends, I want to be able to check in with you. Do you want to text or call? Or do you want to text me or should I text you? Those are examples of how you can give choice even within a framework of something that you really want to have happen. A bit more on the routines, because I think that this is so important for all kids and especially neurodivergent youth, is to establish consistent morning and evening routines and homework completion as well. You want to set a sleep schedule that provides adequate sleep. I think we all know how we feel when we're tired, and it's really hard to regulate our emotions and behavior when we haven't gotten the sleep that we want. Encouraging physical activity is another great way to help with that mind-body connection, and there have been benefits shown for having children with ADHD engage in regular physical activity. Offering a balanced diet, also providing time to relax and engage in unstructured activities. So we don't want to be, again, that balance between being structured and unstructured is really helpful. And then setting clear rules regarding screen use. So thinking ahead of time what your rules are when you give over a device to your child. What are your rules going to be? Is there going to be a digital curfew, a bedtime for that device, before, let's say, an hour before your child goes to bed? What content can they watch? How much time can they get? Are there going to be screen-free zones of the house, like the dinner table where the screen can't go? But thinking ahead of time about what these rules are and communicating those to your child will make it much less likely that those conflicts will come up when you're kind of in that moment. And then you want to consider how you're modeling these routines and behaviors, because our kids pick up on what we're doing all the time, and it can be really hard to tell them, okay, don't bring your phone to the dinner table if you're checking your email for work at the same time. So kids really can learn a lot from what we're showing them. And here I just have a few visual examples of what a routine might look like. So the one on the left is a morning routine. You can see that there are time limits for each one. So this might be paired with a visual timer. And this is just to keep the child on track for the things that need to get done. Sorry. And then the other routine example is the afternoon routine. Again, just kind of showing throughout the day what they can expect, right? So when I'm done with homework, I get some free time. When I'm done with my routine, then I get the bedtime reading, that kind of thing. Here's an example of a homework checklist that can help with the various behaviors that may get in the way of optimally completing your homework. So bringing home the correct materials, reading and following the directions closely, checking over your work and putting it back in your bag. And these can be edited to fit the needs for your child. So if there are certain materials management or other executive functioning difficulties that they're having, you would want to focus the checklist on those things. And then the last thing to cover in this idea of setting the stage for success are some strategies related to building social emotional awareness and resilience. Again, this is like really where a major aspect of the shift in how we think about parenting and what our roles are as parents. And I will say that a lot of this is helpful both for your child and for you, because you're in an interaction with your child, and a lot of the behaviors that your child is engaging in can be really frustrating, and they can fan the flames, your reaction, and if you're understandably getting frustrated in a particular situation. So I think these are just as much to help you in those moments as they are to help your child with their emotion regulation. But the kind of basics in terms of how you can be your child's emotional coach are thinking about ways that you can build your child's emotional vocabulary and awareness by helping them label feelings in themselves and others. So we sometimes need help knowing what vocabulary to use or what a particular feeling feels like, right? When I'm nervous, I get butterflies in my stomach, or my palms get sweaty, or I notice that my heart's racing, or I'm having trouble breathing. Or when I'm feeling angry, my fists curl up and I start to feel hot. So having kids being able to recognize what those physiological sensations are, what's the name of this feeling, how is that person feeling based on what their facial expression is. These are not things that we necessarily just know, right? I think having other adults to help you with labeling those feelings and those sensations can be a really important foundation to building their overall emotional awareness. Next, you want to validate your child's feelings, thoughts, and/or actions, kind of depending on the situation. And the reason that we want to focus on validation is because this is a way to communicate that their thoughts, feelings, or behaviors make sense in a particular situation. It does not mean that you agree with their reaction, but just that you understand that a part of their reaction makes sense. So you may not necessarily think that it was appropriate for your child to have a tantrum about something, but maybe their feeling of being disappointed that they couldn't have screen time is understandable, right? I know how much you love screen time. I get that you're feeling disappointed right now. Or, if you have a teenager and they really want to go out with friends and they say, oh, it's so unfair, everyone else gets to go out. Doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to change your rules. You're still allowed to say, I don't want you going out right now. But you can say, I know how important your friends are to you. I know that so-and-so is able to go out. I hear that that's really unfair. I get why you're upset with me right now. So being able to validate those feelings or thoughts can take the temperature down, helps to build that connection, and can help your child feel understood and accepted for what they're bringing to the table. Oftentimes, as parents, we try to jump to problem solving. We hear them say something like, I'm nervous about my math test. Like, I don't think I'm ready. And we're like, oh, don't worry. You're going to be great. It's our desire to make them feel better, to just try to solve, or like, oh, do you want to go ask the math teacher for help? Right. So we go right to problem solving, or, telling our child that they're going to be great and okay. But instead, that can sometimes make someone feel like the way that they're feeling isn't okay. And so we want to instead validate, and before we go to that problem solving. So to say, I know how important getting good grades is to you. I hear that you're nervous, can really, again, help them feel understood. The next is to teach and model use of adaptive coping skills. And again, this is both you teaching it to them and modeling it for them for their sake and for yours. And these might be skills such as distress tolerance skills, being able to take a deep breath, or squeeze and release your muscles, or count to 10, maybe take a break from a situation, so that way you can get through the situation without making it worse. Then we have effective communication strategies, things like using I feel statements rather than blaming another person, talking to someone at a calm time. You can do this with your child, or you can show your child how you do this with other people. Engaging in problem solving with a person, being willing to come up with different solutions, compromising with them, trying another solution if it doesn't work, and engaging in self-care. So showing them that sometimes you do give time to yourself and take time to do the things that fill your cup. These are all ways that you can show your child how they can attend to their emotional well-being as well. Next, we have providing appropriate scaffolding. So I mentioned before that we now know that kids are different beings than adults, that they have different developmental needs. And we don't need to just kind of expect the same things of them that we do of adults and kind of push them to independence. And at the same time, we also don't want to do everything for them and make it so that they can't learn how to do things on their own. And here we want to provide the right amount of scaffolding. So what is that little bit of support that they need to kind of get to the next level and do the next skill to help them move on their way toward independence. And here you can attend to individual differences and some of those strengths that I was talking about before. So if your child has, let's say, fine motor weaknesses, maybe when you're assigning chores in the house, you'd tell them to carry the grocery bags in from the car because that's more gross motor. If your child has difficulties with attention, maybe you would break those tasks down into smaller steps like I was mentioning, or have them, let's say, take the garbage out instead of cleaning up a room that might have lots of different steps and pieces. So again, thinking about ways that you can still expect certain tasks get done around the house, or that they have certain responsibilities, but attending to some of those individualized needs. All right, so in our hierarchy, so that the setting the stage for success, there are, as you can see, lots of things that you can do to set up your home and to try to prevent the escalation of certain behaviors. It was definitely a wide range of different strategies that you can use. Next, we have positive attending and active ignoring. So when you see the behaviors that you want to see, we want to attend to these, because your attention is like sunshine and fertilizer. And we want that sunshine and fertilizer to go to the flowers, the positive behaviors, so that those grow and overtake the garden, as opposed to the weeds. And unfortunately, in life, we typically are focusing more on the negative behaviors, more on the weeds, because we're trying to solve problems. We're trying to get to school on time. We're getting frustrated ourselves. And our attention will naturally, we show our annoyance, or we're trying to get the thing done. Our attention is naturally going to these negative behaviors. But instead, we want to be ignoring negative behavior, as long as it's not dangerous or destructive, so that that negative behavior reduces. We don't want to give it that sunshine and fertilizer. And then instead, we want to pay more attention to the positive behavior, so that those behaviors strengthen. And especially for kids with ADHD, this is really important, because they love that input. They're looking for that high intensity and that immediate feedback. And so through your attention or praise, this is a way that you can give them that feedback that they're looking for, so that they won't try to seek it in some other less constructive ways. When you're providing praise for the behaviors that you want to see, you want to be specific. So we don't just want to say good job or well done. We want to really highlight the behavior that they engaged in. So here, the example is, great job sticking with that challenging problem. So if that's a situation that could be really frustrating for that child, they might want to give up or crumple the paper, but if they are able to do it, you want to be able to praise that. You want to be sincere in your praise. You can combine it with a nonverbal reinforcer, like a high five or a pat on the back. You want to do it right when the behavior happens. So you're giving that feedback right when it needs to happen. You're using it at a high dose. You're giving it at that high intensity, again, to counterbalance all the other times that, you've gotten frustrated and yelled at them for something that they did. And then most importantly, you want to really focus on the behaviors that you want to increase. So these are sometimes called positive opposite behaviors. So if your child has difficulty transitioning from iPad to getting off the iPad, every time that they are able to do it, thank you for doing that quickly and calmly. Thank you so much for putting that down the first time I asked. If they tend to get upset if you say that they can't have something, then you want to be on the lookout for every time that you say no to something and they handle it, right? Great job accepting that. Thank you for staying calm when I said no. Here we have some examples of praise that you can give for some positive opposite behaviors. So if your child has difficulty listening, then you'd be praising their listening. Great listening so quickly. If they tend to yell when you tell them no, then you want to praise, thank you for staying calm when I told you no. If they tend to raise their voice, you would praise, thank you, I like the calm indoor voice that you're using right now. And these are just examples, and you can tailor this to some of the behaviors that you're hoping to change for your child. The flip side of the coin is withdrawal of attention or active ignoring. And so this is used for minor misbehaviors that are reinforced by your attention. These are for behaviors where the food source is your attention. Things like whining, arguing, tantrums, interrupting, being purposely annoying, trying to get under your skin. Using disrespectful language sometimes is in this category too. You want to be waiting for the good behavior. So you're not completely ignoring the child, you're ignoring the behavior, and you're waiting for the positive behavior to resume so that you can praise it and you can show that this is what I'm looking for. This is what I want to see. So you're not tolerating this behavior. You're waiting for that opportunity to give attention and food, sunshine and fertilizer to the behaviors that you want to see. As an example, typically if a child is waiting patiently, you're ignoring it because That's the behavior you want to see. You're off, making dinner, doing something else. Then they whine for your attention, you respond, and there the whining gets reinforced. Then the child is saying, oh, when I whine, it works. If you use withdrawal of attention, the child is waiting patiently. You would praise at that time. It's the behavior you want to see. Thank you so much for waiting calmly while I finish my phone call. Thank you for, waiting nicely as when I finish dinner. Then they whine. You ignore the whining. You don't say, what? Why are you stop bothering me. Then they go back to waiting patiently and you praise. And that's how the waiting patiently gets reinforced. It's important to know that when you withdraw your attention from a behavior that used to get your attention, the problem behavior will get worse before it gets better. So you do have to be prepared for that escalation in the whining or the tantrums or the calling out, because they're going to say, hey, you used to respond. When I would whine for your attention, you used to say what? And now you're not doing it. And so they may escalate their behavior before actually responding to this technique. So and if you are a caregiver with another individual, you have to really be on the same page about that you're using active ignoring for a particular behavior. All right, the next rung in the ladder here is giving good directions. And this is a way to deliver instructions that will be more likely that your child will be able to hear them. Again, it's not going to be a cure for noncompliance, but when we give directions in this way, it is more likely that your child will comply. The first is to be direct. So you're telling them what to do rather than asking. So you're not saying, can you sit down? You're saying, please sit down. You're being positive, what to do rather than what not to do. So instead of saying, stop running, please walk. Or instead of asking rhetorical questions, why would you do that to your sister, right? What do you want them to do? Please go sit on the other side, right? It looks like you guys need a break. Please sit over there. So you're telling them exactly what you want them to do. You want to give one direction at a time, especially for kids with ADHD. They can have trouble holding multiple directions in their mind at once. So giving one at a time helps them to hear the command and be able to follow through. And you want these to be specific. So telling them exactly, what to do, again, breaking down those smaller tasks into those larger tasks into smaller steps. And of course, developmentally appropriate. So we wouldn't tell our kids to reach up high if they can't reach a particular shelf. We wouldn't want to give commands around answering a particular question for schoolwork because that might be more challenging for them. Maybe they aren't ready to answer that question yet, but saying something like, it's time for homework, please take out your book is different than, answer question number 13. When you deliver these instructions, you want to state them calmly and respectfully. So again, you're modeling good manners for your child. You want to be close to them when giving a direction to make sure that they really have heard you. You want to give the direction right before you want the behavior to occur. You want to give opportunity to comply. So waiting a good 5 seconds, a good 5 Mississippi seconds before you give the command again. Otherwise, it starts to be too repetitive. And then you praise your child for listening right away. So not losing that opportunity to notice the behavior that you want to increase. All right, so next is, and I know I'm really flying through these because it's just kind of a primer of different skills that you can use. But the next are behavior plans and reward systems. And these are used for behaviors that haven't responded enough to all the other strategies that I just recommended. So all the other ones are a bit easier to implement. This is a bit more time intensive. And so you want to first implement these other strategies before you get to implementing a behavior plan. And on the behavior plan, you're going to select, 1 to 3 behaviors that you'd be focusing on at any one time. A behavior plan is targeting these specific behaviors to improve. They are going to receive points or stickers or stars that are like cash that they'll redeem in for rewards. Rewards don't have to be only things that you buy. They're not just tangible items. They can also be privileges like choosing what the family has for dinner or having time on a device that they enjoy or something like that. And it's important to know that changing behavior takes persistence, patience, and practice. So this little review that I'll give here, it sounds very simple, but in practice, it is very hard to get it right. And I'm sure that many of you are probably thinking to yourself, I've already tried this and it doesn't work. And I can assure you that when it's done, with this persistence and patience and consistency, and with some trial and error, we can usually get it to a place that is more effective. It's important to break your goal down into small steps. So even if you want your child to not have a tantrum at all, right? If they're having 5 tantrums a day, maybe the goal is 4 tantrums a day, and then 3, and then 2. And so you want these to be achievable goals so that your child has success. Otherwise, it will be frustrating for you and for them. When you're making a behavior plan, you want to define these behaviors, specific behaviors that you want to see, and then work with your child to identify the rewards that they would be motivated to receive. If something isn't motivating, you choose another. A lot of times we have a reward menu with different types of rewards, so kids don't get tired of one particular reward. You want to make sure that these rewards are immediate. Sometimes the immediate reward is going to be your praise and giving the point on the chart. And maybe at the end of the day or later on in the week, they may cash in for other prizes. But we don't want to wait, until the end of the month to get something. We want that immediacy to be there. You also want the rewards to be contingent on behavior. So the child has to complete the behavior before receiving the reinforcement. We're not bribing them or saying, okay, I'll give this to you, but you have to promise that you'll do X, Y, Z. And then, of course, be consistent. The more consistent the reinforcement, the stronger the behavior change. And then finally, the last rung on our hierarchy before we head off to questions is consequences for misbehavior. And this is the part of the limit setting category that I talked about at the beginning. And we certainly do need these to be part of the picture. So we want to, but as you can see from this hierarchy, focus more on the positive before we get to the consequences. So we don't want the scales to be tipped too much to the consequences. We do want there to be that balance. And when you're giving consequences, you want to be able to do that calmly, use consequences sparingly, administer them immediately after the behavior. You want to make sure the behavior is clearly defined. So is it what type of aggression, what type of property destruction? Is it, is it lightly pushing your sister? Is that falling into the definition or not? Is roughhousing part of it or not, right? So you have to really think through what are the behaviors that are going to lead to a consequence. You want to give these in small doses. So we don't want to take away someone's phone for, a whole week, because then you kind of don't have anything else to give later, and it may be demotivating for your child. You want to consistently apply these consequences, so rather and not just give kind of empty threats, and clearly define these for the child and for yourself in advance, because when you're feeling frustrated with a particular behavior, it may be more likely that you will deliver a consequence that's a little bit bigger than you intended. So being able to really have this plan so that it's not emotion driven, and that your child knows what the expectations are and what will happen and when they engage in a particular behavior. And then, of course, you want these to be delivered in conjunction with positive behavior management strategies. So with all the other strategies that I talked about, you in order to grow the behaviors that you want to see, we have to be doing those other things in addition to having consequences for misbehavior. And then just to kind of round us out, I want to go back to the idea of the parent-child relationship, because this is the foundation for setting limits and encouraging the behavior that you want to see. When you have a positive, open, trusting, warm relationship with your child, this is really the bedrock for all the other strategies. And one thing that you can do to help foster this relationship is have one-on-one time with your child. And whether they're a toddler or a teenager, of course, the activities you'd engage in would be different, but you can provide these, you can provide this time for them no matter the age. And this can be anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes a day, again, like a shorter period of time for the younger kids, a longer period of time for the older kids, where you're giving them a chance to be in charge. I mentioned at the beginning how kids really love to have autonomy and they want to have that independence. So you're giving them that chance to take the lead of the play. this is a chance for them to just get a lot of positive feedback from you, for you to explore their interests, for them to really feel seen and heard by you. You're using the praise that I talked about. You're actively listening and reflecting back what you hear. Maybe you're using validation that I mentioned before. You're avoiding directing, correcting, or criticizing their behavior, even if they're, let's say they're, playing, if they're older and they're playing FIFA and you don't particularly care for that game. It doesn't matter, right? If this is something that they enjoy, then, we're not going to comment on that behavior or that activity choice. You do want to ignore minor misbehavior, some of those attention-seeking behaviors that might be trying to pull you in. And then you would end the interaction for any aggressive behavior or any destruction of property and ensure that you're putting a stop to that behavior. We wouldn't ignore those behaviors. But overall, again, this is a time that's generally very positive, and a time to build that relationship or rebuild that relationship, because a lot of times, parents come and they're quite frustrated with how things are going at home, and this can be a nice opportunity to try to bridge that gap with your child. The strategies that I talked about in this presentation are drawn from evidence-based behavioral parent training interventions, and if you'd like to read more, I've included the accompanying caregiver resources. These are all books that are designed for caregivers if you'd like to read more about these types of strategies. And the Child Mind Institute has a webinar that is a longer webinar called the Behavioral and Emotional Skills Training that you're welcome to take a look at childmind.org/best. Thank you very much.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Mendel. I feel like you gave us a 6-week course in 44 minutes. So we have a lot of great questions. Before I launch into them, I would just want to quickly thank Play Attention once more for sponsoring today's webinar. And I want to kick off with our poll question results. I found it really interesting that 72% of you said that the parenting style that you're aiming to use is very or somewhat different than the one you actually grew up with. Only 3% of people said that it was very similar or identical. That is not necessarily bad news, but I just want a little bit of a gut check for everyone to realize and to fortify that this is really hard. And it's especially hard when we don't have great examples in our own history and our own psychology to look back on. And that's why we're here. So everyone, give yourself credit for coming today and starting, or continuing on this journey. The good news is that 80% of you said that you're receiving at least some support from families, and that is really good to hear. And of course, ADDitude, we aim to be here to support you as well. So thank you for being here. And I did want to use this as a first question. A lot of parents writing in to say, ADHD is genetic. I have it too. I did not have a good model. Consistency is hard for me. What advice can you give parents to kind of like put on their oxygen mask first? Are there resources, classes, books that you would recommend for parents to kind of level set and begin this process looking inward first?
That's a great question. I obviously work with many parents with ADHD as well, given that it is genetic, and all I can say is you're doing a great job. I think that it is definitely hard to be managing your own challenges and your child's challenges as well. Particularly when it is very different from how you were raised. So I think it is important to, just as when we're breaking down a behavior into small steps for our kids, I think I would do the same thing for you and acknowledge the progress that you are making, that you have made. Set small goals for yourself. I just threw a lot at you. Obviously, you're not going to turn around tomorrow and start implementing all of it, but being able to take those small steps and feel really good about small wins, being able to rely on your support network, asking for help where you need it, seeking your own mental health care so that way you receive the support that you need, finding whatever strategies you need to do to take care of yourself. As you said, you put your own oxygen mask on. I mentioned self-care as one of the behaviors to model, again, both because it's helpful to you, but also because it's great to signal to your child, this is a value to me, and this is something that is important for you to do as well. So it's all of those things. It's taking care of yourself. It's finding the right supports. It's, feeling good about the small wins, and, knowing that there's going to be one step forward, two steps back, and that's okay.
Right. Also focused on kind of the parent or caregiver perspective here. A lot of folks talking about challenges with consistency between parents and across households, and advice for those parents who are resolved to follow, more of a positive parenting approach, but the other parent is perhaps not, or does not quite see the value yet. What advice can you give them for getting on the same page?
Yeah. Again, I think the fact that you're asking the question is great. You're already on the right track, being able to notice some of these differences in style. And yes, consistency is really important. I would try to find ways to, again, with the idea of small incremental change, try to find ways to highlight some small ways that other parent may be changing, or if they notice a particular behavior and they say, oh, our son did really well with XYZ, then you can connect it to, oh yeah, I tried this out. And that's what helped him, do well with this particular behavior. And sort of highlighting some of those successes or small ways in which that parent may be engaging in the behaviors you want to see. You can use the same strategies of focusing and giving your attention to the behaviors that you want to grow with the other parent as a way to try to have those be the things that sort of overtake the garden. Sometimes psychoeducation can be helpful, right? You can say, oh, I heard in this talk that these are the types of strategies, right? But sometimes people are not ready to hear it. So you have to kind of meet them where they are and see if you're able to, again, take some of those small ways in which they're doing the right thing and then let it flourish from there.
Okay. And would a similar approach work, do you think, with a teacher who falls more on the authoritarian side of the scale? For parents
in terms of like praising their behavior. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I think it is, behavior. Let me just tell you, behavior is hard to change. It is, we have strategies that we know can change behavior, but as I'm sure many of you know, setting a new goal of how many times you want to go to the gym or a particular diet you want to have, right? Like it can take a lot of patience and persistence to change any behavior. So, I don't know this particular individual, this particular teacher, and how much they are practiced in their ways of behaving in this particular way. But I do think giving some feedback and noticing the things that you want to grow can be helpful. And then also sharing some things that work for you at home to say, look, I know that things can be really challenging with this student. Here are some things that I found have worked at home. Are there any of these things that you think you'd be willing to try in the classroom? Sometimes, that can be really helpful and a relief to the teachers if you give them some strategies that they may be able to work with.
Mm-hmm. A more collaborative approach.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you offer some examples of both rewards and consequences that may be appropriate for elementary school age and then adolescence? A lot of people asking for some specific ideas.
Sure. So with the rewards, I think that really comes down to what your child is interested in. For the little kids, they tend to like smaller, little things can really excite them. Even a sticker or a tiny toy from the dollar store, those things can even be very motivating for them. But you also can think about privileges, like I mentioned before, getting to choose the family dinner or getting to, choose the family movie for movie night, getting to use a particular device that you like to use, sometimes getting to control what Alexa is playing or what music is playing in the car. Any place where choice is something that they can have control over. And then, of course, any particular item may be more may vary based on what your child likes. For teenagers, this may be like a getting out of a chore card, or getting to extend their bedtime by a certain amount, getting more time on their phone, getting to go out with friends, getting to extend their curfew, getting to have spending money to be able to do something that they want to do with their friends, things like that. In terms of consequences, usually timeout is something that we will, for something like aggression or property destruction or repeated noncompliance, we might recommend a timeout if the child is under 10, sometimes even less than that. It sort of depends on the size of the child and if you've tried timeout before. But generally from ages 2 to 7, timeout can be effective. And then even in that 7 to 10 range, still can be a useful tool depending on the child. And that may look different for different kids in terms of what your backup is if they don't go to timeout. Something like a loss of privilege, losing screen time or losing dessert or some other preferred activity or something like that. And then for teenagers, you'd be looking more at grounding or taking away the phone. Again, you want to do those things in small doses. And so for grounding, no more than 2 days worth, and then for taking away the phone, usually again in smaller increments, so that way they're motivated to try to earn it back for other things, and then you still have it to take away later. They're not left without their phone for a whole week or something like that.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you for those specifics.
Sure.
And then we did have a number of questions about the active ignoring, and one that I thought was a really good question was, does it make sense to explain to the child why you are ignoring them? Someone wrote in to say, should you say, I'm not responding because you're whining. I'll wait until you use a different tone.
So some parents like to use a when then statement at those times. When you ask nicely, then I will give you the candy, and then they're able to, fix their tone, or, when you ask me nicely, then I will answer your question. That you certainly can do that. It can be effective either way. I think it's just, you have to be mindful when you're active ignoring of your whole stance, right? And if you're going to say it in kind of an annoyed way or show any annoyed look on your face, you're not actually active ignoring, right? So you really want to make sure that you're not feeding that behavior with any aspect of your attention.
Oof, that is a tall order. That is hard work.
It is. It's a harder strategy. In fact, I debated not even talking about it because it does require, I think, support, really figuring out how to utilize it. So it's a hard one to put into place.
Okay. And for those times, which are frequent, when our kids are ignoring us and we've got a hard deadline, we need to get out the door to school, and you just don't have that flexibility to actively ignore them. Are there any strategies we can use? Like, for example, a child just refusing to brush their teeth in the morning and you have to be out the door in 3 minutes.
Yeah, I'm so glad this question came up, because I can clarify that active ignoring is utilized only for behaviors that are looking to get your attention. So when your child is refusing to brush their teeth, they're probably not looking to get your attention. They're looking to get out of that act of brushing their teeth. So I do think that having them brush their teeth and not escaping that that task is actually it is what you want to do. You do want to get them to do the thing and show that, okay, you having a tantrum about this is not going to throw me off my game and make it so that, we're not going to complete this particular task. But I would think about some of the other strategies that you can use in terms of setting the stage for success, and whether it's using a timer or a song or having a reward or, kind of previewing, you having a checklist of the things that need to get done, right? Like those are all different things that you can do to make it more likely that they will get to the point of brushing their teeth to head out the door.
That's so important. Thank you for clarifying that. Yes. So unfortunately, we are at time. Dr. Mendel, thank you so much. My notebook is full, and I just wanted to confirm for everyone listening today, this video will be available for replay and for sharing, and the slides will be available to you. So if you felt like it was a lot of information, you are right, and you will be able to refer back to this resource. We also hope that you will join us for more ADDitude webinars. Next week, it is a webinar on cognitive disengagement syndrome, which used to be called sluggish cognitive tempo, and how that relates to ADHD. So if you want to know about that and other ADDitude webinars and research updates and articles, just sign up at attitudemag.com/newsletters. For now, Dr. Mendel, thank you so much again. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. We will see you again soon.
Thank you for having me. Take care.